5 seconds to go. Start. The present appeal challenges the validity of the order dated 8th June 2018 passed by the Madras High Court's Madurai bench in CMSA MD number 34 of 2014, wherein the High Court allowed the appeal of the respondent husband herein, thereby setting aside the judgments of the two lower courts and thus granting a decree of divorce on the ground of cruelty. The appellant herein is the wife challenging the grant of divorce. The appellant and the respondent got married on 30th June 2002. At the time of their marriage, the respondent was employed as a software engineer in Punjab. After the marriage, the appellant moved to Chandigarh with the respondent and secured employment as an engineer in the same company as the respondent. The couple lived together for a few months, during which the appellant conceived a child. Subsequently, she returned to her paternal home for the delivery of the child. On 9th July 2003, she gave birth to a female child. The respondent visited to see the child, but when he requested the appellant to return to the matrimonial home, she allegedly refused. Consequently, the respondent issued a legal notice for reunion on 29th December 2003, to which the appellant replied on 31st December 2003 with allegations against him. Thereafter, the respondent filed a petition for restitution of conjugal rights in January 2004, pending which attempts at reconciliation through a panchayat failed. During the pendency of the restitution petition, the appellant agreed to resume cohabitation and joined the respondent at his residence on 28th June 2004. The couple subsequently moved to Bengaluru, Karnataka, where they resided together. However, the respondent alleged that the appellant treated him with cruelty during this period. Eventually, the petition for restitution of conjugal rights was dismissed for default. The appellant once again left the matrimonial home, allegedly without informing the respondent, and returned to her parental home. The respondent claimed that this desertion, combined with the mental anguish caused by her absence during the demise of his father, amounted to cruelty. Consequently, the respondent filed a divorce petition in 2010 on the grounds of cruelty. The appellant denied the allegations in the petition for dissolution of marriage and contended that the respondent was at fault for failing to bring her back to the matrimonial home. She filed a counterclaim for restitution of conjugal rights in her response before the trial court, expressing her willingness to reconcile. Both parties presented their cases. The respondent examined himself as PW1 and submitted 12 documents as evidence, while the appellant testified as RW1 but did not produce any documentary evidence. After evaluating the evidence, the trial court dismissed the respondent's divorce petition, holding that he has failed to establish that the appellant's conduct amounted to mental cruelty. The respondent's appeal against this decision was also dismissed by the First Appellate Court. The First Appellate Court concurred with the trial court's findings, observing that the respondent had not proven that the appellant had voluntarily deserted him without cause or inflicted mental cruelty. Instead, the First Appellate Court noted that the appellant had expressed a desire for reconciliation. Challenging the findings and the judgment of the First Appellate Court, the respondent approached the High Court. The High Court, in its judgment, reviewed the contentions of both the parties as well as the rulings of the courts below. The respondent's primary contention was that the appellant had subjected him to cruelty both mental and physical. He argued that her actions, including filing false cases against him and deserting the matrimonial home, amounted to mental cruelty. He further claimed that despite his repeated attempts to reconcile, the appellant remained adamant and disinterested in reuniting, which led to the breakdown of the marriage. The respondent emphasized that their separation, which had lasted for over 10 years, demonstrated the irretrievable breakdown of the marital relationship. On the other hand, the appellant contended that the courts below had correctly appreciated the evidence and rightly dismissed the respondent's claims for divorce. Her counsel before the High Court argued that the alleged acts of cruelty were not substantiated with sufficient evidence and that trivial disputes or normal wear and tear of married life could not constitute grounds for divorce. The appellant maintained that the burden of proof resulted on the respondent to demonstrate acts of cruelty which he failed to do. Furthermore, the appellant contended that there was no evidence to suggest she had no interest in continuing the marital relationship and the claims of cruelty were unsubstantiated. The High Court, in its findings, held that lodging false complaints against a spouse amounts to mental cruelty. In this case, the wife had filed a criminal complaint alleging dowry harassment against the husband and his family, but later abandoned it without pursuing the matter further. The court inferred that the complaint was baseless and filed with intent to harass, constituting an act of mental cruelty. Furthermore, the court observed that the couple had been living separately for over 15 years by then, which demonstrated an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. Drawing from judgments of this court in Naveen Kohli versus Neelu Kohli and Samar Ghosh versus Jaya Ghosh, the High Court noted that such prolonged separation indicates that the marital relationship is beyond repair and forcing the parties to remain in a dead marriage would be neither just nor beneficial. Additionally, the High Court concluded that the appellant's act of leaving the matrimonial home without reasonable cause, coupled with her lack of interest in reconciliation, amounted to desertion. The High Court extensively analyzed the principles laid down by this court, particularly in the case of Samar Ghosh Supra, which provides illustrative examples of mental cruelty. These principles emphasize that mental cruelty is a subjective state of mind caused by prolonged anguish, frustration, and emotional turmoil, which renders it unreasonable for spouses to cohabit. The High Court observed that the appellant had filed a false criminal complaint accusing the respondent and his family of dowry harassment. However, the appellant neither pursued the complaint nor provided reasonable justification for her actions. Her conduct demonstrated malice and intent to harass, causing mental agony to the respondent and his family. The High Court inferred that this amounted to mental cruelty as the complaint disrupted the matrimonial harmony and caused significant emotional distress to the respondent. The High Court also addressed the respondent's claim of desertion. The appellant had been living separately from the respondent for over 15 years without valid reasons or attempts at reconciliation. Although she filed a counterclaim seeking restitution of conjugal rights, she failed to actively pursue it, revealing lack of genuine intent to resume marital cohabitation. Prolonged separation coupled with absence of any reasonable explanation demonstrated the appellant's intention to permanently withdraw from the marital relationship. The High Court held that this constituted desertion under the principles established by this court, which defined desertion as the willful and permanent abandonment of matrimonial obligations without consent of the other spouse. Stop.